Jimmy and Kimmy, thank you for the cup of tea. It sure is nice after a long day of work. So I heard you had a discussion in school about the presidential election. It's quite an amazing occasion that we have a woman as a candidate for president. Did you know that not very long ago, women didn't even have the right to go to college? In fact, women didn't even have the right to vote. Back in 1848, women were struggling in their day-to-day lives. The ideal woman was very submissive. Her role was to be meek, obedient, loving wife who was totally subservient to the men around her. Women who began to stand up for themselves and their rights were criticized. Some men believed that women couldn't think for themselves and needed men to direct and control them. But without strong women of the time like Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, and Susan B. Anthony, we might not be where we are today. Your mother might not have the job that I have. I wouldn't own this house or have that lovely car that I drive outside the driveway. We might not be sitting in this room. Women wouldn't even be allowed to become doctors, nurses, lawyers, or even begin to think about voting in the upcoming presidential election. Join me as we go back in time and witness the importance of one woman and her role in the woman's right to vote.
Matilda, I know it's warm, dear. Would you like me to open a window?
No, I'm fine with this fan. It's hotter than blazes today.
Is there anything else, ma'am? No thank you, Emmy. Oh, wait. Do you have those cookies? Do you have any cookies made?
Yes, ma'am. I'll go get them.
Thank you.
Does hear Robert McCoy threw his wife out of the house?
Lucy, I thought we agreed we weren't to gossip today. But you go on if you must.
No, how can that be? Where does he expect to go? Where are the children going?
Just want to hear what I heard? He's not allowing her to take her clothes. She cannot see the kids. Yesterday when I went to Sullivan's store, I saw her in front of the bank with a satchel sobbing.
That is egregious. Did thou approach her? Did thou say anything to her?
I was too embarrassed for her.
Lucy, art thou with us or against us? We must find her and shelter her. When we leave here today, I will go and find her.
I agree. We must be each other's sisters. Mr. McCoy's behavior is reprehensible. His behavior and behavior in kind will not change unless the laws change.
It's not just Mr. McCoy's behavior that's reprehensible. What about the fact that we as women cannot enter university? Perhaps one day I would like to study law and take a seat as a judge.
First of all, never in our lifetime will we ever see such a thing. And secondly, we would never be allowed to vote thee in.
The history of mankind is repeated injuries on the part of man toward woman. It's terrible. But I have an idea. Let us have a meeting. How about a convention for women only? We will call it the first convention ever, called to discuss the civil rights of women. Now, where can we hold it?
At Wesleyan Chapel in Seneca Falls. I know the pastor and his wife. I'll have my driver take me past today.
When? We must do this now. We must present the convention with a draft of framework of our rights that thou will fight for. A declaration of sentiments.
Never before Before in the history of Western civilization, no similar public meeting had ever been called. Here's the chapel today. Elizabeth's Declaration of Sentiments received unanimous endorsements with few amendments. The only declaration that did not pass was the call for women's enfranchisement. That women should be allowed to vote in elections was almost inconceivable to many. It was not until Frederick Douglass started to speak. He said, "Women, like the slave, had the right to liberty. Suffrage is the power to choose rulers and make laws, and the right by which all others are secured." In the end, the resolution won enough votes to carry. 100 of the signers found themselves to be the target of ridicule from the nation. The attack was so great that many of the signers withdrew their names and influence from the document. With so many new points for discussion, and with reservation, Elizabeth consented to a second convention 2 weeks later. This led to a women's rights movement that spawned conventions nationwide. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony traveled the country lecturing and organizing for the next 40 years, eventually winning the right to vote, which emerged as the central issue. The right to vote took 72 years to happen. Way too long for Elizabeth and Susan to see. We now jump from 1842 to 1872. You all have heard the name Susan B. Anthony. We all know she's on the coin, but why? Why is she so important? Because she had the audacity to vote in 1872, illegally when women weren't allowed to vote.
Hello, ma'am. I'm Sheriff Lewis. I'm here to see Miss Susan Anthony. Are you Miss Anthony?
I'm her sister, Hannah. I'll go fetch her. Won't you come in out of the rain?
It's quite all right. Thank you.
Susan, there's a U.S. Marshal here to see you.
Whatever for, Hannah?
I don't know, but it doesn't appear this call is for a friendly chat.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Miss Anthony. I'm Sheriff Lewis. This is my badge. And Mr. Storrs, the U.S. Commissioner, has sent me to come get you.
Whatever for?
To arrest you, ma'am.
Is this the way you arrest men?
No, unfortunately, we actually use handcuffs.
Well, then I demand to be arrested properly.
I'll go with you, Susan.
No. I'll go ahead and you can follow after your sister.
No, if I'm under arrest, I will go with you.
All right, that's fine. But for my own curiosity, did you have any doubt of your right to vote?
Not a particle.
Susan's lawyers refused to enter a plea at the time of her arrest in November. When Anthony refused bail, she was held in custody until the grand jury could meet to consider an indictment in January. Her lawyer then petitioned for a writ of habeas corpus, which is asking the court to determine whether the person is being imprisoned lawfully. The judge then raised her bail from $500 to $1,000. Susan still refused to pay. Her lawyer paid her bail. Her trial was set for May.
The 14th Amendment gives no rights to a woman to vote. And voting by Miss Anthony was in violation of the law. Assuming that Miss Anthony believed she had the right to vote, That fact constitutes no defense, if in truth she had not the right. She voluntarily gave a vote which was illegal, and thus is subject to the full penalty of the law. Upon this evidence, I suppose there is no question for the jury, and that the jury shall be directed to find a verdict of guilty. Would the prisoner stand? Before sentencing, has the prisoner anything to say why the sentence should not be pronounced?
Yes, Your Honor. I have many things to say. For in your ordered verdict of guilty, you have trampled underfoot every vital principle of our government. My natural rights, my civil rights, my political rights, my judicial rights are all alike ignored, robbed of the fundamental privilege of citizenship. I am degraded from the status of citizen to that of a subject. And not only myself individually, but all of my sex are, by your Honor's verdict, doomed to political subjection under this so-called form of
The
government.
court cannot listen to a rehearsal of arguments. The prisoner's counsel has already consumed 3 hours presenting.
But may it please your Honor, I am not arguing the question, but simply stating the reasons why sentence cannot, in justice, be pronounced against me. Your denial of my citizens' right to vote is the denial of my right of consent as one of the governed, the denial of my right of representation as one of the taxed, the denial of my right to a trial by jury of my peers as an offender against law. Therefore, the denial of my sacred rights to life, liberty, property,
The court cannot allow
and...
the prisoner to go on.
But your Honor will not deny me this one and only poor privilege of protest against this high-handed outrage upon my citizens' rights. May it please the court to remember that since the day of my last arrest, November, this is the first time that either myself or any person of my disenfranchised class has been allowed a word of defense before judge or jury.
The prisoner must sit down. The court cannot allow it.
All of my prosecutors, from the 8th Ward corner grocery politician who entered the complaint to United States Marshal, Commissioner, District Attorney, your judge on the bench, not one is my peer, but each and all are my political sovereigns. And had your Honor submitted my case to the jury, as was clearly your duty, even then I should have had just cause for protest. For not one of these men was my peer, but native or foreign born, black or white, rich or poor, educated or ignorant, awake or asleep, sober or drunk. Each and every one of them was my political superior, hence in no sense my peer. Even under such circumstances, a commoner of England, tried before a jury of lords, would have far less cause to complain than should I, a woman, tried before a jury of men. Even my counsel, the Honorable Henry R. Selden, who has argued my case so ably, so earnestly, so unanswerably, before your Honor, is my political sovereign. Precisely, as no disenfranchised person is entitled to sit upon a jury, and no woman is entitled to the franchise, so none but a regularly admitted lawyer is allowed to practice in the courts, and no woman can gain admission to the bar. Hence, jury, judge, counsel must all be a superior class.
The court orders the prisoners to sit down. It will not allow another word. Now that there is order, will the prisoner rise for sentencing? The sentence of the court is that you pay a fine of $100 and the costs of prosecution.
May it please your Honor, I shall never pay a penny of your unjust penalty. All the stock and trade I possess is a $10,000 debt incurred by publishing my paper, The Revolution, 4 years ago. The sole object of which was to educate all women to do precisely as I have done. Rebel against your man-made, unjust, unconstitutional forms of law that tax, fine, imprison, and hang women, while they deny them the right of representation in the government. And I shall work on with my might and main to pay every dollar of that honest debt, but not a penny shall go to this unjust claim. And I shall earnestly and persistently continue to urge all women to the practical recognition of the old revolutionary maxim that resistance to tyranny is obedience to God.
Order!
So Jimmy and Kimmy, true to her word, Susan never paid a penny of her $100 fine. The campaign took 72 years for the women and their men supporters to be successful. The right to vote was finally won in 1920, and that wasn't really that long ago. It was also called the Anthony Amendment.
Yes.
And to think, it all started with a cup of tea.
Place a second. Sharon, can you come on here for a second? First of all, we'd like to acknowledge our piano player. She's kind of new with the Battle Arts program. Hadn't signed on the dotted line, but she's pretty close to being there. Joelle Henningsen, ladies and gentlemen. Well, again, because it's an original score, she wrote a lot of that, especially the courtroom scene, so we wrote all this stuff. So. And at this time, I'd like to present these flowers to you, ma'am. Did I got the right ones? Thank you. Thank you very much. Now for the author of it, right here, very humble. I'd like to present you these flowers, and also this little token of our appreciation from the cast. Hey, if you want to introduce yourself, you don't want me to introduce because I'm Deputy Dog here, ladies and gentlemen. Get up with Deputy Dog. No, if you guys want to introduce yourself, that's fine. Sharon Stone, anyway, go ahead and introduce yourself in case you don't know. Go ahead.
Emily, Libet. Loretta Higgs, played Hannah.
Alexandria Williams, I played Matilda.
Judy, I played Gospel Lucy.
Kim, I played Elizabeth.
Angelica, I did Susan B. Anthony.
Ooh.
Hi, I'm Sean Passon. I'm an actor. I played. Sorry, Steve was helping me out
Sean,
with that.
what happened to your finger?
My finger, acting. And I played the judge.
Terry, I played the sheriff.
In case you didn't know, can we announce it? This is last week, but last couple days. So, you want to say something? No. I think the shock of the scene kind of got to him, but anyway. And of course, I'm Aaron.
Nancy, I played the modern woman.
Thank you, folks. Thank you, Brian, for allowing us to do this.